In this video, I'm going to show you guys how I built this really easy to maintain shallow pond aquarium for some beautiful guppies and other live bearers. As always, I'm going to start with the background and the foam mat. This tank did came with a foam mat, but it is white, and since the shell was black, I prefer a black foam mat. For the background, I bought this static window film. I normally always buy the cheaper self-adhesive stuff, but I wanted to try something else. Now, to be honest with you guys, I prefer the self-adhesive one. It just sticks better to the glass, whereas the static one comes off pretty easily. Next up is the substrate. I'm going to use quite a lot of plants in this shallow pond, so I'm going to make sure they will have enough nutrients. So the first layer is going to be APT start. This is a combination of nutrients and beneficial bacteria, and I mostly use it to speed up the cycling process. The second layer is going to be the dental plant substrate. This is a very nutrient-rich clay mixture, which is also capable of absorbing nutrients from the water column. Then I'm adding in a few root caps, and lastly I'm covering everything with a layer of AQUASOIL. Moving on to the hardscape, I basically just want to make a nice looking structure with wood and rocks. The rocks can stay fully submerged, but I would like the wood to come out of the water so I can attach plants to it. The rocks are a type of lava stone, and the wood is called dragonwood or honeycomb wood. I've used these pieces once before in a bigger shallow tank. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will leave a link in the top right corner of the screen. Now those pieces of wood were a bit too big for this tank, so I used a very blunt saw to cut them in half. Okay, is the hardscape almost done? I just need to glue everything together. Of course, as always, with liquid super glue and cotton pads. Five minutes later and everything is stuck together. If you haven't used the super glue method yet, I highly recommend you give it a try. I'm adding a little bit more AQUASOIL in the back, and in the front I'm going to make a barrier with some small lava rocks. The last step is to add a thin layer of cosmetic sand, and after that the hardscape is completely done. Looks pretty cool already, but I'm pretty sure we won't see much of the hardscape anymore when the plants start growing. Speaking of plants, I've ordered a bunch of easy aquarium plants that can grow both submerged and immersed. The first batch of plants is just going in the back pocket where all the nutrients are. Before I can add the rest of the plants, I need to see the layer with water and light. So I'm going to move the tank to the shelf and start filling it up. For the light, I'm going to use this freshwater blaze from Aquaillumination. I also use this light on the lava rock arch aquarium, and the plant growth is amazing. I've modified it a little bit so I can clamp it onto the shelf above the tank. For filtration, I'm going to use an Oasa Biomaster 250. This is the new upgraded version, which produces more flow and less noise compared to the first model. And full transparency, the light and the filter were both sponsored, and I didn't pay for these items. Well, this was a bit of a struggle, but I've actually managed to get the filter underneath the shallow tank, completely plumbed in as well. And of course I had to upgrade it with some nice glass lily pads. So here's the outflow and the inflow is over there in the back. Okay, light infiltration sorted, so now let's add the rest of the plants. I have some really nice Crypt Parva, which is very slow growing and perfect for the shaded areas. Then along the waterline I'm going to plant some HC Cuba. This normally will be planted into the substrate, but with enough light and some nutrients in the water column, it will grow attached to hardscape as well. On the left and right side I'm planting some hairgrass and a type of pennywort. Now a shallow pond like this really needs some floating plants as well, so I'm also going to add in some redwood floaters. That's the planting done, so we can now add the beneficial bacteria from the APT start. Then we need to wait for the tank to cycle. Two weeks have passed and the top section of the shallow pond is starting to look pretty good already. But the lower section is covered in brown algae. Now don't worry, this is completely normal and I was totally expecting it. It's actually a good thing because it means we can start adding in the first inhabitants. Another 2 weeks have passed and the algae is still here, so time to add some more helpers. These are coral red platies, and they immediately get to work and start to feast on the algae. Okay guys, this shallow pond is now almost 10 weeks old. I think roughly 10 weeks old, I'm not exactly sure. I've set it up on the 5th of September and it is now 14th of November, so more than 2 months later. And this thing just keeps getting better and better. Last week I added some new fish, and since we already had the red coral platies, I thought let's just stick to the live bearer theme. Let's get some guppies. So these are actually called koi guppies, and I thought koi guppies in a pond makes sense, no? Maybe, I don't know. They have a really cool pattern, so mostly orange and then some blue in the center of the body. I thought they look really nice. I've also last week installed a second light, especially the Hydrocotyl verticillata, which is this plant with a round leaf, was starting to block a lot of the light. And because of that, the Ludwigia super red was starting to turn green. Of course, I want to have some nice contrast between red and green plants. So I've now installed a second AI blade here. Completely unnecessary, but I had this light lying around and my electricity bill is already up to the roof. So I thought, why not just add another light? The only thing I don't like about this shallow tank is that I've somehow managed to get some duckweed in here. And I mean, if you know duckweed, you know that how fast it grows. It's also impossible to get rid of it because it just gets stuck in all the immersed plants. But then again, you know, it's a pond style aquarium, so I guess a little bit of duckweed is just part of it. I love just sitting here and being able to watch the fish through the front glass, but also from above, you know, it's like two different dimensions. The good thing about pond style setups is that they usually run very stable, especially with this kind of setup where you have a lot of immersed plants. Because you have such a large plant mass, and there's very little chance of getting algae because all the excess nutrients are just soaked up by the fast-growing plants. So I did have a little diatom phase in week 3 and 4, but after the diatoms disappeared, I basically didn't really have any algae anymore. So maintenance-wise, this tank is really easy. I mean, I do spend quite a lot of time every 2 to 3 weeks removing some of the duckweed. Of course, the immersed plants are growing quite fast, so they need to be trimmed regularly. But all the plants in the lower section, they're all very slow growing, so they don't really need any maintenance. Yeah, and besides that, it's just a 50% water change every week or so. So when I started this aquarium, I was spraying quite regularly with this APT Dew. It's like a nutrient spray. but I think after 2-3 weeks it kind of stopped. I don't think it's really necessary. I mean, there's a few plants here and there that look a little bit dry, so maybe they could look a little bit better if you would spray more regularly, but I think overall the tank looks pretty good without spraying. I am dosing liquid fertilizer as well, so this is APT3, which is a complete liquid fertilizer. So basically just 1 or 2 pumps every few days or whenever I remember. I'm not very consistent with dosing, but I do dose every week. And again, as always, if you want to use these products, there's a link and a discount code in the video description. So yeah, guys, I think that's it for this shallow pond video. If you've never tried a shallow tank before, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Just something different than a regular aquarium. You know, you have the shallow, the underwater world, and you have the above world with all the immersed plants. Yeah, that's it. Don't forget to smash the like button. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.